Hello, everyone, and anyone who's listening to this audio recording at this moment. This is probably my fifth podcast episode, and it's going to be my 90th essay on the Substack, sharequino.substack.com. That's the Contemplative Current podcast. So today's essay is called Taking a Hint from Nature. You are all right, right? And it's going to have a contemplative practice in finding what's present despite all the moving parts. So I wrote this at a time. I think I wrote this on the day of the inauguration. That's Donald Trump's inauguration, and I can't help but notice a lot of the varying perspectives and fears and concerns and even the excitement in the different spaces, and in situations where we have a lot of concerns, a lot of worry about the future. There's something else that we can do more productively, apart from just saying do not worry about the future, right? How can we see what's beyond our concerns? So I uh I put it on myself to write this article, this essay, take a hint from nature. You're all right, right? So I before I start to read this, I wanted to also give a maybe my commentary, my my pre-commentary before we go into the entire essay itself. And I start this essay by talking about what happens when I sit at my at the bench right behind where I live, and how I notice everything changes, including myself who sits at the bench. Like there are days that I come there and I'm dealing with something that's totally different than I was the day before, but there's always that one thing that's present. And in this essay, I try to get us to see that thing that's beyond beyond object, that thing that's always present when everything fluctuates. So let's start this one. So over the years, I've spent countless hours daily on a bench facing a pond. So much time, in fact, that I've become deeply acquainted with the landscape's intimate details. I've noticed the quiet choreography of the trees, each tree's signature bow to the wind, how their leaves flirt with the sunlight, how some shed and rebound with quiet determination. It may be in my head, but I also know some of the sounds they make depending on the intensity of the wind. Okay, it's in my head. I've learned the personality of the grasses, their cycles of flourishing and retreating, how they whisper for fumigation when pests invade, how they brown during the colder months and their green lusciousness in spring. I know when the rude gnats return in delight to suck the blood from my flesh, like, or well, from the flesh that's exposed to the elements. They never even greet me. A simple hello, we've been here, we've not seen in 9 months. What have you been up to? Would suffice. I know every duck that graces the pond each particular season. Their waddles, their pecking orders, their quirks, and then there are the Canadian geese. Gosh, the last season, two factions visited the pond every day. They would act like rival kingdoms, staging imaginary battles, honking their grievances across the water in what seemed like a staged war. This bench has become my sanctuary of contemplation, where the external world begins to mirror the internal one. And in moments of deep, deep stillness, the line between the two dissolves. I start to see that they're not two separate worlds, but just one, a seamless, singular existence. It's such an incredible unfolding as what seemed like two worlds become just one, and this me disappears. This practice of observation of nature has begun to guide and influence how I see the world, of our mental state, and how we relate to our stories. By nature here, it's not like we're separate from nature. I just want to point that out. So many of times we look at things in our lives that are broken, things we want changed, things we would rather have some other way than it currently is, without factoring the mysterious power of nature's change. Read that as life's change. Our minds demand change in the way it wants to dictate without factoring the understanding that nature does not bend its will to the individual mind. Our minds demand transformation on rigid terms, oblivious to the effortless, undirected flow of life. We yearn for change, to bend reality to our will, rarely pausing to consider the mysterious rhythms of nature. Take a look at the most immediate piece of nature we possess, our bodies. Notice how they change, impervious to our wishes. No matter how fiercely we cling to an ideal, the body heeds its own timeline. I've reached that age where my hair now retreats at the temples, leaving bald patches that mean that I have to cut my hair almost every week to maintain the evenness of my scalp. Meanwhile, I remember my younger self bemused by older men with thinning hair, thinking them somehow at fault. And now, uh, here I am, a participant and recipient in this cosmic joke. I've witnessed my heart's wear and tear, a quiet rebellion against my past neglect of my health. Meals eaten late in the night now exact their toll, a far cry from the days when I could feast at midnight and drift to sleep without consequences. I've noticed so keenly how my pinky toenail, is that what it's called? How it grows so much slower than the larger counterpart, especially my big toenail. It's not just my body. I've seen change etched into the faces of friends and families I haven't seen in years. Time weaves its threads, reshaping them while leaving their essence intact. Nature moves as it will, yet we worry about controlling life. We worry about our lives. We worry about what we will become. We worry about what may happen to us in the future. We worry about the current world economic systems as if our worry will change anything. No, I'm not advocating for or endorsing of passivity. I'm attempting to invite you to lean even closer to see what's happening under the hood. It's change appearing as the unfolding and the morphing of forms. All things change. It's the fundamental fact of life, yet it's the facts that we struggle the most to accept. In seeing change, if we even pay attention, we may imagine that change happens for the worst or it happens for the better. Yet, yet in our dualistic thinking, we refuse to see that change happens in neither direction. We become blinded to change naturality or neutrality rather. There's some comfort here, I must say. There is some comfort here. Once again, you have to lean even closer to see it. It's the comfort of seeing that all things change. In their change, we remain unchanged at the core. It's so self evident. Take a look at your baby picture, right? Notice how your body has transformed, your face reshaped by time. What changed? Clearly, it's the body. And if the body changed, then you, the observer, or the one who's aware, the essence, could not be the body. Isn't that astonishing? Isn't it interesting how we include ourselves as the changer because forms change, and so we believe it's us that changed? Isn't this proof of our attachment to forms? It's like believing that since your clothes were stained with oil, then you are the one who's stained. What is it truly that's unchanged by the morphing of forms? What is it that is changeless? There are so many hints and Easter eggs that show us our changelessness. Take a look at your dreams when you sleep. With all the activities of the mind, with all the activities in the dream, wasn't the body changeless and immovable right in bed? Take a look at your tastes over the years. As they changed, weren't you the one noticing those changes? Consider the timelessness of memory. You remember your earliest recollection not as someone else, but as the observer, the same observer who sits here today. Even when emotions ebb and flow, joy, sadness, anger, it's always you who feels them, unchanging at the center. Have you ever noticed how the act of observing your thoughts reveals a gap between the thinker and the observed? That gap is another whisper of this unchanging or this changeless essence. Changeless essence. It can sound like just poetic words, a fluffy phrase. But what really is it? How do I know? How could you know? How the heck is it? Here's where I would ask you to use the little bit of mental energy and intelligence we have to lean into this particular investigation. Like me, sitting on this bench, staring at this willow like tree, I want you to ask, what is it that gives life to the tree? We see the leaves, we see the branches, we see the stems, and when we pull out the soil, we see the roots. What is it? That thing we can't see. Oh, that may be harder to investigate because we may not know. You're not the tree, are you? So let's investigate you. What is that that gives life to that changing body? What's the thing that can be seen that knows? What is this knowing? This knowing, the knowing that you are, the knowing that is aware of the changing tides of emotion, thoughts, and materialness of the body. Is that knowing not untouchable by the things that change? Can you figure out the untruth in this statement that I just made? Where's this assumption lacking, if you can point that to me? Where's this conclusion bound to fail? Viktor Frankl, in his harrowing account of surviving a concentration camp in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, highlights something so profound. And that's what I point to here. He writes, even when everything external was stripped away, there was an inner freedom, a core self that could not be touched. How do you find that core self? How do we stay in that core self, in that core knowing? I recently heard, and I can't recall where, a reference to this metaphor that totally describes this. If a room were asked what made up the room, it would mention the chairs, the tables, the furnitures, curtains, windows, carpet, and photo frames. If those were taken out of the room, though, it would still be the room. Why? The room itself is the space in which all of these objects find their rest. The room was not made up of the objects. The room was the room without the need to be defined by the objects. Just like the room, we tend to define our lives based on the objects that arise in our lives. And so when life changes, we tend to think it's our lives that change. But our lives don't change, nature changes. The same nature that changes our skins, the same nature that moves the seasons, the same nature that changes fashion trends, that same nature changes the objects in our lives. Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet, captures this beautifully in his writings. He urges, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. And do not worry about your life, that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come? These words point to an essence that remains steady even as the storms of life churn around us. Rumi's poetry serves as a timeless reminder that the core self, it's unshakable. Nelson Mandela too exemplifies this profound truth in his life. In his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela reflects on the years he spent in imprisonment, a period during which nearly every external freedom was taken from him. Confined within the harsh walls of Ruben Island, he endured physical deprivation, isolation, and the ever present shadow of injustice. Yet, in the face of these challenges, Mandela discovered an unyielding truth. While the world outside could be controlled, his inner world remained inviolable. His captors could dictate his physical movement, but they could not touch the essence of who he was. He found a profound sense of freedom in that recognition. At this core, and at his core, he was untouchable by external forces. This realization did not simply sustain him, it transformed him. Rather than succumbing to bitterness, he emerged with a spirit of reconciliation, understanding that his inner being, unchanging and resilience, was his truest source of power. Mandela's journey is a testament to the changeless core that resides within all of us. It demonstrates that even when external conditions are dire, there is an inner space of freedom, peace, and strength that cannot be taken away, that cannot be touched. His life invites us to look beyond the surface of our experiences and find within ourselves the same constancy that enabled him to endure and ultimately rise above the most challenging circumstances. You see, it's often easier to make mention of people who endured hardship and harvest meaning from these. I'm keenly aware of this wave in my articulation of this still untouchable, immovable essence of us. But let's even shelf the story of any form of resilience for a moment. Let's draw attention to times in our lives when things were really good, when we shared meaningful moments with friends and families, when we hit some good fortune, when we felt so much love that it turned into sparks of ecstasy. Isn't there still a core that's untouched and unmoved by these pleasant circumstances? If that's hard to touch, reflect for a second. What was it that noticed those good moments? Is that noticing? Is, is that notices, not by itself untouched, still, peaceful, transparent? I'm also keenly aware that we can make allusions to the perfection of nature, pointing to all good things that are happening in nature, but failing to factor in all of the natural disasters, the famine that happens in parts of the world, the destruction and the decay on aspects of the earth. Even in these, friend, there's a life force that's apparent. My friend, I write this to you as I write to me that despite the changing times, we cannot stay focused, well, except for rhetorical purposes. We cannot stay focused on whether they are good times or bad times. We cannot focus on whether they are challenging times or times of opportunity. A sweet, sweet, sweet spot to bring ourselves to is that spacious space that is witnessing or that is witness to all of the changing times. It's challenging at first to not be able to place one's hands on an object, but with training, we can stay as the space of the room. We can stay as the life that animates the body. We can stay as the changeless face that was never born and will never die. Pay attention. Do you see it? In a second, I would give us prompts. Uh, I will share prompts to a contemplative practice that I called embracing the changeless amidst change. And so, if you can find a quiet, comfortable spot, if possible, in nature, or a park bench, a spot by a pond, or simply near a window with a view of trees or sky. Let this space become your sanctuary for observation for this next couple of minutes. Now close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, feeling your body settle into stillness. Begin by noticing the most immediate sensation without attempting to change anything. Notice the feel of your breath, the support on the surface beneath you, and all of the sounds that are around you. Bring attention to all of that. Every sensation, every thought, every feeling. Now, gradually open your eyes and shift your focus outward. Now, observe the details of the natural world in front of you. The movement of leaves in the wind, the play of sunlight, the behaviors of animals, insects, or passers-by, the objects in front of you. Just pay attention without labeling or judging. Just simply notice. Reflect on the changes you see. Perhaps a cloud drifts and reshapes, a breeze strengthens or wanes, or a bird flits from one branch to another. Ask yourself, what remains constant as all this change unfolds? Now gently bring your attention back again to yourself. Notice your breath, your body, your thoughts. Recognize how emotions and sensations arise and fall away, much like the movement in nature. And ask yourself this: who or what is observing these changes? Am I the changing body, or the thoughts that come and go, or something constant beneath it all? How would I even know? Now let's go deeper into this inquiry. What is aware of your thoughts, your emotions, and your experiences? I want you to ask this also. If your body and mind are always changing, what part of you notices these changes without being changed itself? Now let go of the efforts to define or explain. Simply rest as the awareness that observes everything. Feel into the spaciousness of this awareness, unchanging, peaceful, and present. And to close out, I would want us to reflect on Rumi's words. Try not to resist the changes that come your way. How do you know that the side you're used to is better than this one to come? Let this remind you to embrace change as a natural unfolding of life rather than something to control. And with that, we end the contemplative part or exercise of this essay. So, how do I integrate this into life? I would say that, and I write here, after your practice, carry this awareness into your daily activities. When challenges or joys arise, if you have the opportunity, just pause and ask, what is noticing this moment? Am I caught in the change or resting in the unchanging? That could be a really good way to start to peek behind this illusion or this mystery that's happening around. It's something that's so overlooked, that there's that notices that's not a part of the experience directly. So revisit this practice daily or weekly, letting the stillness and observations deepen. Over time, the gap between the external world and the internal observer may dissolve, revealing the seamless unity of experience. Friends, I hope that this was a good one for you. Please feel free to leave me any feedback. Let me know how this landed for you, and see you in another one. Bye for now.